I'm Madeline Carter. I was born into legacy, groomed for compliance, and expected to smile while my soul shrank in a tailored dress. Last night, at a restaurant where everything gleamed with curated warmth, my father cut me off. My mother smiled through her teeth. My brother stayed silent. I told them I was starting my own firm. They told me I was no longer a Carter. Then my father slid an envelope across the table. Not a blessing. A job offer. At a company I didn't apply to. My future. Chosen for me. Again. When I refused, he raised his wine glass and said, "Then I'm done paying for your life." So I dropped my house keys on the table and walked away. No screaming, no tears, just a strange stillness, like shedding a name and feeling lighter. They erased me, but in doing so, they gave me space to build something they could never own. They thought they were closing a door, but they didn't know. I had already drawn a map to the exit. Have you ever been pushed out by the very people who claim to love you for your own good? Drop a comment below, because you're not alone. And if you believe that walking away can be the first step to reclaiming yourself, hit that like button, subscribe, and follow my story. Because this isn't just about a house, it's about ownership, in every sense of the word. The steak knives caught the candlelight like scalpels. Everything in this restaurant gleamed with a curated warmth, from the velvet booths to the blood-red wine. It should have felt like celebration. Instead, I was already rehearsing my exit. "Dad, Mom, Bryce," I began, voice tight but steady. "I wanted to tell you in person. I'm launching my own design firm. It's small, but it's mine." Silence. A full beat. Then the rustle of a napkin, the quiet clink of silverware. Douglas Carter didn't look up from his porterhouse. "Madeline," he said slowly, "I thought we'd outgrown your experiments." My heart thudded in my ribs. This isn't a phase. He slid a cream envelope across the table like a bill. I didn't need to open it. The Carter insignia on the corner was enough. A position at Sterling and Holt, marketing liaison. Start Monday. Competitive salary, benefits, real mentorship. I stared at it. I didn't ask for this. "You need direction," he said crisply. "Enough of this finding yourself. That time's past." Elaine dabbed her mouth with a cloth napkin, dainty as ever. "We just want what's best, sweetie." "No, you want what's controllable," I said. My voice cracked. "You always have." Bryce kept slicing his steak, eyes fixed on the plate like it held state secrets. I waited for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. "I'm not taking the offer." Douglas's fork paused midair. "Then I'm done footing your bills." I laughed, sharp and involuntary. "You mean I've been buying compliance all these years?" Elaine tilted her head, her smile all pity and precision. "We had hopes for you, Madeline. And I kept thinking if I became exactly what you wanted, you'd love me." No one denied it. Douglas pushed his chair back. The scrape cut through me sharper than any words. "You're on your own." I stood, dropped my house keys onto the linen tablecloth with a clang. I always was. I walked out without finishing my drink. Jenna's apartment smelled like chamomile and laundry sheets. She barely had time to unlock the door before I collapsed onto her couch. She didn't ask what happened. She just wrapped me in a blanket and sat beside me. I stared at the shadows on her ceiling. "You okay?" she whispered after a while. I should feel angry, but mostly, my throat clenched. I feel empty. It wasn't just tonight. It was every graduation they skipped early, every smile that came with a condition, every time Bryce got a hug and I got a report card critique. "I spent 25 years trying to be lovable," I said. "Turns out I was just useful." Jenna held my hand, firm and steady. "You're not them." I didn't answer. My gaze drifted to the corner where my suitcase sat, half-zipped, stuffed with everything I could grab. They hadn't just cut me off tonight. They'd erased me. but maybe that was a gift. Later, when the tears had dried into silence, Jenna asked quietly, "What now?" I looked at her, eyes raw but clear. "I build, from the ground up." They left me with nothing but doubt. So I turned that into drywall. The studio was barely bigger than a walk-in closet, tucked above a laundromat that hummed like a tired heart. The floorboards creaked when I moved, the single window stuck halfway open, and my desk was a salvaged barn door resting on 2 milk crates. But it was mine. Every morning started with coffee brewed from Jenna's hand-me-down French press and a list scrawled in Sharpie on the wall. Clients to email, invoices to send, materials to scavenge. Half the time, I bartended on weekends just to afford paint. The other half, I was covered in it. My blog, From Dust to Design, had 12 followers that first month. Most were probably bots. Still, I wrote like the world was listening. "This house is as cracked as I am," I typed one night, fingers blistered and brain buzzing. But cracks let light in, and I've got a hammer. It started with the coffee shop on Willow and Elm. Liam and Tyler had inherited it from an uncle and wanted to turn it from death by brown tiles into something worthy of New Haven's brunch crowd. They couldn't afford a top-tier designer, so they gave me a shot. I gave them everything. I sketched late into the night, scavenged tile from demolition sites, and bartered design hours for reclaimed wood. Tyler brought homemade muffins when he visited the site, and Liam made playlists for the renovation. Somewhere between sanding floors and hanging pendant lights, they started calling me kiddo, and meant it in a way my own parents never had. "The reveal day," they cried. I cried too, but I hid in the back room until it passed. A week later, a food blogger with 80,000 followers posted a photo of the space. Within 48 hours, my inbox was full. By 2018, I'd saved enough for a down payment. The house on Farwell Street was a crumbling colonial with ivy choking the porch and ceilings caving like tired lungs. The realtor looked at me like I was insane. "Structural issues, black mold, no central heat," she listed. "You sure you want this?" "Yes," I said. "It reminds me of me." Demo started that summer. Jenna showed up with gloves. Natalie Kim, a landscape architect I met through Tyler, designed a small backyard oasis that cost more in sweat than dollars. My blog audience grew by the hundreds. Strangers commented with encouragement, advice, and even offers to send me tools. I documented everything. Each tile laid, every wall patched. I turned splinters into symbols, posted captions like, "Day 212. You'd be amazed what falls into place once you stop needing permission." One night, the living room was finally done. The walls glowed a soft cream in the lamplight. The hardwood floors, stained, warm, and smooth, reflected years of effort. I sank down in the center of the room, spine resting flat against the earth I now owned. Tears slipped down my cheeks without asking. This wasn't just shelter. It was proof. I could build. I did build. My phone buzzed. I blinked, disoriented, then reached for it. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in 2 years. Madeline Carter. My thumb hovered. I stared. Then I answered. They didn't knock. They just sent invitations with my address printed on them. The envelope came in a gold-trimmed ivory sleeve, thick and smug. I didn't even open it. Jenna did. One eyebrow arched as she pulled out the card. Her eyes flicked across the print, then slowly turned to me. "Your house?" she said. "They listed your house as the venue." I took it from her hands, scanning the elegant lettering. "Join us for the wedding of Bryce Carter and Aubrey Whitman at the Carter Garden residence." My garden. My house. My name absent. 9 years of silence, and this was their return. My voicemail lit up with syrupy messages from Elaine, dripping with faux warmth. "Darling, we've had a hiccup with Bryce's venue. But your home? It's so full of charm. Just like you." She didn't ask. She announced. Then came the texts. "Douglas, you will host the wedding. That house exists because of our name. Bryce, Come on, Mads. Don't be petty. Family helps family. Group thread, renamed Wedding Week. I was added without consent. The kicker? A wedding planner named Savannah called to confirm rental details. I told her there were none. I think you're mistaken, she said brightly. It's already on our schedule. I hung up. Then I opened Instagram. Aubrey Whitman, future sister-in-law and lifestyle influencer with 312,000 followers, had posted a sneak peek of the venue. My porch bathed in sunset light, captioned, "Can you believe this dreamy place? Thanks to the Carter family estate." The comments were gushing. That week, anonymous one-star reviews started appearing on my business page. Claims of missed deadlines, shoddy work, photos that weren't mine. I knew the pattern. It wasn't random. Natalie Kim showed up with Thai food and 2 laptops. "Two options," she said while opening one. "We go scorched earth, or we go legal." I chose both. While I documented every communication, Natalie drafted cease and desist language. She installed motion-detecting cameras on the porch, synced them to her phone and mine. At night, I sat with Jenna in the kitchen. My tea went cold. They always thought everything I built belonged to them. "Not anymore," Jenna said, "and not without a fight." 2 days later, Cynthia Whitman, Aubrey's mother, asked to meet at the cafe near Elm Street. She wore pearls and a jacket so stiff it looked laminated. I wore paint-stained jeans and didn't smile once. "We just want this to go smoothly," Cynthia said, sipping her tea. "You mean illegally?" I asked. She tilted her head, feigning surprise. "Oh no, there must have been some mix-up." Strange how that mix-up includes press releases, social posts, and a catering schedule from my backyard, I said. "All without a lease." She set her cup down. "This wedding is important, for many people, for your family's reputation." I leaned forward. I burned that bridge years ago. Reputation died in the fire. That night, an email arrived from the wedding planning team. I almost ignored it, until I saw the forwarded message mistakenly attached below. From Cynthia Whitman, time-stamped 4:08 p.m. "If she pushes back, we'll bring a locksmith." Don't ask Bryce. He's too soft. My chest went still. I handed the phone to Jenna, who read it with growing fury. Natalie's fingers were already flying across her keyboard. "We'll shut them down," Natalie said. I stared at the screen, breath slow, deliberate. No more tears, no more shaking. Jenna looked at me. "What now?" I turned to her, voice steady. "We're not canceling a wedding. We're staging a lesson in ownership. When a Carter doesn't get what they want, they don't back off. They tighten the noose." The morning air outside my house was still, unnervingly so, the kind of quiet that preceded a storm. I opened the front door to find my mailbox overflowing. 3 wedding vendor flyers, 2 event consultation packets, and a folded note with my name typed, not written. Inside, "We understand you're under pressure. Let's not make this harder than it has to be." No signature. Natalie had just finished installing a second surveillance camera the day before, angled discreetly toward the gate. When I sent her a photo of the note, she replied in seconds. "That's textbook coercion. Keep everything." The false reviews kept coming. Now they weren't just vague. One accused me of discriminatory practices. Another said I stole a design blueprint from a grieving widow. Ridiculous, theatrical lies, each more damaging than the last. Jenna and I met at our usual cafe, tucked into a corner booth. She stirred her coffee like she was kneading tension into the cup. "Why don't they just ask like normal people?" she muttered. I snorted. "Because asking implies I have a choice. My father taught me that. Power doesn't ask. It assumes." The next blow came from a florist I'd worked with on 3 past projects. She called, flustered. "Madeline, the Whitmans said you approved the event plan. I need final specs for floral installations." I froze. "You're telling me you've already started?" "They said you'd signed off on it last week." I didn't sleep that night. At 12:04 a.m., Bryce called. Hey, he said like we were catching up after coffee. Look, I know you're mad. I'm not mad, I said. I'm done. He sighed. Okay, but can we talk? Mom's a wreck. Dad's, well, he's doubling down. Not my problem. His voice cracked. They said you'd come around. I stayed quiet. Madeline, he said, voice softer. Don't do this. Don't do what? Protect my house? My name? He was silent. They're hurting my business, I added. Spreading lies. That's not a hiccup, Bryce. That's defamation. More silence. Then, they said, if you didn't cooperate, they'd handle it. There it was. I hung up. The next day, I met Natalie at her office. Walls lined with zoning maps, building codes, and evidence folders. She tapped her screen, pulling up records of the Whitmans applying for temporary event permits under an address 1 digit off mine. Legal sleight of hand. They're trying to slide under radar, she said. If the city overlooks the typo, the event's approved. And if I try to block it later? Looks like you're interfering with a permitted event. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I printed 6 cease and desist letters, 1 for each vendor, 2 for the Whitmans, and 1 to file with local law enforcement. Natalie handed me a flash drive. They've left digital fingerprints everywhere. I've archived it all, and now you have them. By that night, I had posted private property, no trespassing signs around the garden and had every camera feeding into both my laptop and a secure cloud. At 11:32 p.m., a text came in. Savannah, wedding planner. I was told you'll be off-site that weekend. Can we access the garden early for setup? I stared at it, pulse even, breath steady. Let them come. I didn't have to crash the wedding. I just had to lock the gates. The ocean was quiet this morning, the kind of quiet that holds its breath just before impact. I stood barefoot on the balcony of my rented villa at Clearwater Cove, sipping coffee while my laptop streamed 6 camera feeds in flawless 1080p. Camera 1, front gate, motion alert. A white shuttle bus pulled up, guests in pastel linen and pressed suits stepping out, their confusion growing by the second. One woman pulled out her phone, rechecking the invitation. Another whispered something to a man with slicked back hair who kept glancing at the locked gates. My security team was already in place, clad in black polos with crisp, unreadable expressions. One of them approached the crowd and unfolded a single page. I'd written it myself. Private residence, not a venue. Entry without permission is trespassing. All permits invalid. Have a good day. Camera 2. Driveway. Douglas was the first to arrive in a sleek silver sedan. He stepped out like a CEO walking into a hostile boardroom. Coat crisp, jaw tight, eyes already storming. Elaine trailed behind him in pale pink, her smile fixed and cracking at the edges. They didn't speak to the guards. They demanded, pointed, barked. Nothing moved. Inside the villa, I refreshed the live stream. Camera 3 showed the backyard. Aubrey stood in a sheer veil, tears dotting the corners of her mascara. Cynthia paced beside her, phone clutched like a rosary, whispering into it with increasing sharpness. The planner, Savannah, flipped through a binder, mouthing, "This doesn't make sense," over and over. Camera 4, Bryce. Hands on his hips, pacing in front of the main gate like a man rehearsing an apology or a tantrum. Maybe both. Another motion alert? Camera 5. Police car pulling up. I smiled. Natalie had filed everything 3 days ago. Permits, ownership documentation, cease and desist letters. All perfectly timed. All pre-approved. The officer stepped out, approached Douglas, and after a brief exchange asked for paperwork. Douglas shoved something into his hand. The officer read it. Then he pointed to the gate. Douglas's mouth moved. Sharp. Furious. The officer shook his head. I muted the feed and turned up the ocean sounds instead. One by one, the vendors began to leave. The florist backed her van out of the driveway, petals fluttering behind her like confetti for a wedding that never was. The caterers hesitated, then packed up trays untouched. Even Savannah finally shut her binder, her shoulders drooping like a ship's sail when the wind gives out. On the feed, Bryce walked up to the gate again, tried to press something into the lock. A card? A note? It didn't matter. He stepped back. Then Douglas slammed his palm against the wrought iron gate. "This isn't over," he shouted, jaw clenched, eyes flaring at the cameras like he could burn them down with rage alone. I brought the coffee cup to my lips. "You're right," I whispered into my drink. "It's finished." The sun was already sinking when I returned from the beach. The resort concierge waved me over. "A courier just left this," he said, holding out a cream-colored envelope. No postage. Hand-delivered. The return address was written in cursive I knew too well. Elegant, measured, deceptively soft. Elaine Carter. No sticker, no wax seal. Just the quiet insistence of something unsaid. I took it without a word, and didn't open it. They tried to throw a 200-person wedding in my home. I threw a 20-person dinner. No one cried. The house was exactly as I left it. Calm, clean, waiting. Even the garden, freshly mulched and trimmed, held an eerie kind of stillness, like it had been bracing itself for something that never came. I walked the perimeter slowly, checking each camera feed, each window latch, every motion alert that had triggered and passed in silence. Nothing broken, nothing touched. Just faint tire marks in the gravel where their convoy had reversed back into the world. Inside, I placed the sealed envelope from Elaine on my desk. 2 others waited with it, one from Bryce. The handwriting stilted, like he couldn't decide whether to apologize or justify. The last from Aubrey, delicate and floral, as if a better envelope could soften a worse intention. I slid them into the drawer, unopened. Jenna arrived first for dinner, holding 2 pies and a bottle of wine in each elbow like a culinary octopus. "Pumpkin and pecan," she announced. "One for tradition, one because I don't believe in rules." Natalie followed, wearing boots still dusted from a landscaping job, holding a string of Edison bulbs she'd salvaged and rewired. We strung them through the trees together, weaving light through branches like quiet celebration. Liam and Tyler came in laughing, arms full of mismatched dishware and a cheese board that looked like a magazine cover. Then came Clara and June, readers who had once sent kind comments under aliases, now flesh and blood friends with mismatched earrings and soft smiles. Someone brought roasted carrots. Someone else brought a casserole I couldn't identify but went back for twice. No one brought drama. We ate in the garden, under the lights and the rising chill, coats draped over chair backs, steam rising from mugs, the smell of cinnamon and rosemary hanging in the air like a memory. After dinner, Jenna raised a glass and stood, her fork tapping just once. "To what we built," she said, voice low but firm. "Together." The table went still. For a heartbeat, even the breeze paused. "To everything you made, Mads, with nothing but grit, sweat, and stubborn joy." We toasted, and I smiled. Not the forced kind I used to wear like armor. This one lived deeper, under the ribs. Later, after everyone left, I stood in the kitchen rinsing plates, music soft behind me. The old private property sign still leaned by the back door. I carried it to the edge of the garden and replaced it with a new one. Hand-painted. Simple. Belongs to those who respect it. Back in the office, I opened my laptop to check orders, blog stats, invoices. One new email blinked. Subject: New project inquiry. From Daniel Carter. Message: I hope this finds you well. I believe we may have intersecting interests. I stared at it. No shaking hands, no swelling anger. Just silence. Then I clicked delete and turned off the light. They came for her house thinking it was just a place. 4 walls, a lawn, a name on a deed. What they didn't realize was that she had built more than a home. She had built a boundary. There had been a time when Madeline Carter would have opened the door without asking why. When any trace of affection, even coded in entitlement, felt like a lifeline. Years ago, she would have welcomed them with shaking hands and a wounded heart, grateful for the crumbs of inclusion. But not anymore. Because after 9 years of silence, what they sent wasn't an apology. It was an invitation, not to reconnect, but to reclaim. They didn't knock. They assumed. That was the Carter way. And that's why, when they tried to host a wedding on her land without consent, Madeline didn't fight back with raised voices. She fortified the fence, updated the permits, and called her lawyer. She didn't need to argue ownership. She had the title. In the end, there was no explosion, no courtroom screaming or public humiliation, just confused guests, stalled deliveries, security guards explaining calmly that this was private property, and a homeowner watching everything unfold from a distance, sipping her coffee as truth quietly won. The irony was sharp, but not cruel. They had chosen to forget her when she needed them most. Now she remembered that. Not to punish, but to protect. Because sometimes justice isn't served with revenge. It's served with refusal. She didn't read their letters. She didn't need to. She had built her life from discarded parts, broken contracts, ignored calls, unseen talents, and turned them into foundations stronger than any inheritance. The hollow praise they once withheld no longer held weight. She had filled that space with something real. Sweat-built floors, self-earned success, a community that chose her as she was. There was no toast from a father who once called her a disappointment. There was no forced hug from a brother who looked the other way. Instead, there was Jenna raising a glass under string lights in her garden. There was laughter echoing off wood beams she sanded herself. There were dishes passed between hands that never expected anything in return. And there was peace. Quiet, earned peace. But most importantly, there was choice. Madeline had chosen who sat at her table. And more than that, she had chosen who didn't. The lesson didn't come from revenge. It came from breaking the pattern of quiet compliance. She didn't raise her voice to reclaim her power. She documented, she fortified, and she waited. Not because she was passive, but because she had nothing left to prove. Justice doesn't always need a stage. Sometimes it needs only persistence, and a door that no longer swings open at the sound of old names. Because entitlement may knock loudly, but it cannot pass through doors built on boundaries and resolve. In the aftermath, no war was declared, but a lesson was written, quiet, permanent, into the story of a woman who was once cast aside. She didn't just reclaim her home. She reclaimed the right to define her family, her worth, her voice. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But when it does, it reverberates with a clarity no one can ignore. And in that silence, those who betrayed her finally heard it. Too late to undo. Just in time to understand. If you've ever been told to know your place, if you've ever had to fight for what was already yours, if your silence was mistaken for weakness, then this story was for you. Because boundaries aren't betrayal. And walking away doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing yourself. Share your story in the comments. Like this video if you've ever had to rebuild from the ashes. And subscribe, because the next time someone tries to write you out, you'll want to remember what it feels like to write yourself back in. Next demo story. Come on, Ava. You act like this place is still yours. But the moment you let us in, it stopped being your home. You're just another roommate now, one who's barely around. That's what my brother said to me. The same brother I gave space to. The same one I sacrificed my peace for. And that was the first slap. Not with a hand, but with entitlement. With the kind of quiet cruelty that comes from being so comfortable in someone else's world, you forget it's not yours. I opened the door with kindness. They answered with invasion. If you're watching this and you've ever felt pushed out of your own life by the very people you tried to help, if you've ever made room for someone only to be treated like a guest in your own home, then stay. because my story is just getting started. The key turned in the lock with a smooth click, a sound I used to find comforting. But that day, it sounded final, like the end of something I couldn't quite name. I opened the door wide and stepped back, giving Susan and Jake a warm smile I didn't fully feel. My mother looked up at me with her signature soft smile, the one that always made outsiders believe she was the image of maternal grace. Jake trailed behind her, wheeling in 2 duffel bags and a monitor wrapped in a hoodie. "Thanks again, sweetheart," Mom said, kissing me lightly on the cheek. "Just until things settle." "Of course," I replied, "just for a while." She used to say things like family sticks together, no matter what, but it never felt truer than when we were falling apart. I thought maybe letting them in was a step toward healing something fractured. But in hindsight, I think I just unlocked the gate. My apartment had always been my sanctuary, a clean, bright space with carefully chosen furniture, neutral tones, and sunlight that kissed the hardwood floor in the afternoons. I'd saved every dollar from years of freelance gigs and odd design jobs, skipped vacations, and lived below my means to afford it. Every detail, down to the navy throw pillows, was a quiet rebellion against chaos. But chaos doesn't knock. It slips in quietly, wearing a smile. The first few days were okay. Mom kept complimenting how tidy the place was, running her hand along counters I'd already cleaned. Jake said thanks a lot, mumbled mostly, and spent the afternoons on his laptop scrolling or gaming. I let it go. It was only temporary. Then came the little things. Jake's shoes by the door, always in a messy pile. His energy drinks multiplying in the fridge like rabbits. The TV on at full volume while I was in meetings. He claimed he was working on a new pitch deck. But his open tab said otherwise. Fantasy football, YouTube, and whatever meme site still existed in 2024. And Mom. She floated through the place like she'd been there forever. Rearranged my spice rack. Brought in a houseplant that didn't match anything. Suggested we move my books from the